Hi, and top of the morning to you, or afternoon, whenever you're listening to us. Good Monday. We've got a lot to get into and a little time to do it, so let's go ahead and fire away. The first thing we want to get off and running with was the brawl that took place last night. LeBron James gets into it with Isaiah Stewart. And just to peel this back a little bit, I know LeBron's a very unpopular player for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons why people don't like LeBron, from his social justice warrior stuff that most people feel are disingenuous to the way he will stand up for certain things but will let the carnage in China continue. And then I think there's also just a general dislike of LeBron because a lot of people don't like the way that he moved back and forth from city to city. And then let's not even talk about the fact that you can't keep up with what team he's pulling for. Claims to be a New York Yankee baseball fan. Claims to be an Ohio State Buckeye football fan. But you never really know because it always seems like with LeBron, no matter what's going on, he is taking the easy road. So, the play that happened last night, if you missed it, during a rebound off of a free throw, LeBron hit Isaiah Stewart in the eye with most likely his elbow, I believe. Isaiah Stewart took notice of it and didn't like it at all. And if you've seen the video, it escalated into an actual brouhaha where several people had to hold back Stewart. Now, one thing I'll say about LeBron, he was keeping the peace. He looked almost dumbfounded. I don't think he realized that he hit him in the eye with his elbow. And I don't believe that it was intentional. LeBron's a lot of things, but he's never been known as a dirty player. But I can also understand if any of you have ever played basketball and you've been hit in the face during a rebound with an elbow or whatnot, regardless whether the guy meant to do it or not, you get pissed. Now, for Stewart to be that pissed that long makes you wonder if there's more of a back story to this. If there's more things going on here than meet the eye. But looking off of what happened there, I do believe he overreacted a little bit. LeBron James was ejected along with Stewart. Now, LeBron James was ejected because it was his second technical. So he would have been ejected regardless. Isaiah Stewart was ejected because of the antics. Now, shortly after, he starts having to get pulled back and whatnot. He's got blood running down his face and whatnot. And so he had a legitimate reason to be upset. I just don't know if LeBron really meant to do what he did. But that's what you have there. We expect the anything that comes of this, any kind of suspensions will probably come down I would think by the end of the day. I don't know if you'll get a suspension of LeBron James. I think it's more likely that Isaiah Stewart gets a game or two to kind of cool his jets and cool off and go on their way. Next news item, we are going to get into the Dan Mullen thing, but before we do that, do want to go over the National Football League really quickly. Just looking at the standings, won't go into each individual score today, but looking at the standings in the NFL, you've got the Patriots now leading the AFC East. They're 7-4. They are a half game in front of Buffalo, and they still play the Bills 2 more times. They play them on Monday night, December 6th. We will bring the call to you. Tones Areola and I are going to bring that call to you. So, Patriots, Bills. It's going to be a fun ride down the stretch. You look over in the AFC North, and you've got a log jam. The Ravens were able to squeak out a huge victory yesterday against the Bears without Lamar Jackson. He was feeling under the weather, he and a few other players. But right on their heels, you've got the Bengals at 6-4, just a game behind the Ravens. The Steelers are 5-4-1 after they lost last night to the Chargers, which was a thriller, and basically a busted coverage led to that loss. And then you got the Browns down around there at 6-5. They get the W against Detroit. You're looking at an entire division that is separated by just 2 games. So that should be a lot of fun going down the stretch. The Titans lose a big game to Houston. Houston is terrible, and the Titans just didn't show up. There's no other way around it. You can make all the excuses you want for this and that, the weather, blah, blah, blah. The Tennessee Titans did not show up, and the Colts did show up. The Colts showed up in a big way. They went to Buffalo, got the W, so the Colts are now 2 games behind Tennessee in the standings in the loss column, but they're technically still 3 games behind for the division because Tennessee, remember, has the tiebreaker on Indianapolis. And there are reports that Derrick Henry could be ready as soon as right after Christmas. So you keep an eye on that. The AFC West is a fun one too. The Chiefs, you got them at 7-4. They really put it on Dallas yesterday. But the Chargers 6-4, Raiders and Broncos both sit there at 5-5. That division is far from over. So the AFC is wide open. Now the Cowboys losing, going to 7-3, and Philly getting their second win in a row. They're sitting at 5-6, just 2 games behind Dallas. They still have a lot to go there. Philly and Dallas, this thing is not over by any stretch of the imagination. Now remember, Philadelphia lost the first game to Dallas, so they're not going to get any kind of a tiebreaker even if they do pull out the win. It's really going to come down to the division standings. But the Eagles and Cowboys, they face off in the final week of the season. So that's going to be a huge, huge game. Now you look at the division standings. The Cowboys are 2-0. Philly's only played 1 divisional game. Philly is 0-1. Not likely that Philly's going to catch Dallas, but you do have to keep an eye on them because I do think Philly has a run in them, and they have a very friendly schedule down the stretch when you look at the fact they still play Washington and New York 2 times along with the Cowboys to finish it off. They'll play 5 divisional games in a division that's not very good. They'll play that down the stretch. 5 games in 6 of their last games. So 5 of their 6 last games are a divisional game, and the only game that's not a divisional game is against the Jets. So you really like Philadelphia's chances to go on a run here. Now, it's tough to win divisional games when they are played so close together, and that's what Philly will be going up against. They're going to go at the Giants this coming weekend, and then they'll play the Giants 3 weeks later. They're going to play the Washington football team on December 19th, and then play them 2 weeks later on January 2nd. So that's what we're looking at there. But the NFC East, for all intents and purposes, has become a 2-team race, and Philly's not necessarily out of it. I do think their most logical way in is the wild card, but they're not out of it. You got the NFC North. The Packers lose to the Vikings. So the Vikings now 5-5. They're hanging in there for the wild card, and only 2 games behind Green Bay for the division. And so you like what Minnesota did yesterday. And remember something, they still play Green Bay one more time. It is in Lambeau Field, but they play them one more time. And if they were to find a way to win that game, they would then have the tiebreaker on Green Bay. The Bucs play a big game tonight for them. They are 6-3 on the year. If they were to lose this, they would drop to just 1 game in front of the Saints. But more importantly, that would be their 3rd loss in a row. So Tampa Bay wants to right the ship. You figure they're going to get it straight, but that is a very big game for Tampa Bay tonight because you don't want to lose 3 straight. It's not how you want to go into Thanksgiving. I always say that there's 3 seasons in football. There's the beginning of the NFL season, and that carries you all the way till this week right here. Then when you hit Thanksgiving weekend and beyond, that begins the second season of the National Football League. And for the longest time, your bye weeks were practically over. Now they're stretching out a little bit, so it's a little different than it used to be. But the other big thing that happened in the NFC South yesterday, the Carolina Panthers lost a game they should not have lost. They lost to a bad Washington team with Cam Newton coming back with all the emotion that's there, and he played meh. And to be honest with you, I watched a lot of that game. Meh. Not very impressed. Haven't been impressed with Cam Newton in 4 years, and I don't know why people thought it was going to change all of a sudden. So I do think that Carolina will fade down the stretch, even with that defense. I just don't think they have it under center, and that's going to be an issue that they're going to attack in the draft or possibly free agency for Carolina. I think Carolina's trying to get rich quick, and they're not going to want to build through the draft. I think they're going to try to do something in the offseason to bring in a quarterback to man the ship, because all the other pieces are there. They've got a good defense. They've got CMC when he's healthy. They've got Hubbard, who is a very good number 2 running back. And then, of course, Moore is a phenomenal receiver, and they've got other complementary receivers to go along with it. Could they be a little better? Sure. But all in all, what that team is missing is a quarterback, and you got to figure somewhere on the free agent market or maybe via trade, they're going to make a run. Then it takes you down to the NFC West, and Arizona, 9-2, finds a way to go in to beat Seattle. Seattle's atrocious. Arizona now 9-2 and atop the NFC, and the Rams sitting there at 7-3, and lo and behold, here come the 49ers. They're 5-5, and they've got a real shot at making the playoffs. Remember, there's 3 wild card teams now. It's not just 2, there's 3. And if I'm handicapping it right now, obviously I believe the Rams are going to be there. But I'm starting to believe more and more that when you get down to the bare nuts and bolts of this is a race between the 49ers, the Saints, the Vikings, and the Eagles. 4 teams for 2 slots. That's what we're really talking about in the NFC. And so there you have the NFL. All right, the next big news item before we head on out of here. Dan Mullen gets canned at the University of Florida. And basically what they're saying is, look, you can't hate Florida for this, but whoever takes the next job has to be very aware of this. Florida's not going to put up with a bad season. Remember something, Dan Mullen had Kyle Trask and company on the footsteps of the playoffs last year. He had a complete rebuild, and I did not believe that this team was any good. I said way back in July that I thought that they would lose 4, maybe more. And sure enough, here they are with 6 losses, needing a win against their arch rival Florida State on Saturday to be able to make a bowl game. I don't think I necessarily thought that it was going to be this bad, but they had a lot to improve. Dan Mullen's biggest issue was that he brought Grantham back as a defensive coordinator, and a lot of fans hated it, and especially alumni. And when you open that door, which he did, all you have essentially done is give them an opportunity that when things start going south, they jump on you. And then, of course, remember Mullen has had a few situations there at Florida. Go way back when he first got there, and they had the kid that had all the sexual assaults being accused on him, and his roommate did not want to be roommates with him anymore, and Mullen and his staff wouldn't move the kid out, so the kid transferred. When that happened way back then, I said at that moment Mullen was going to be a big problem at Florida, and he was. He doesn't have the moral compass that you want. And Florida at the time, they were willing to sell their soul. They were willing to sell their soul because they had gone through such a bad Muschamp and McElwain era. And they'd been so bad for so long, they were willing to sell their soul for victories. And they got their victories. They had a very good year last year. But Kyle Trask left. Kyle Pitts left. And that defense didn't get any better, even though he brought Grantham back. And the offense you knew was going to struggle because Emory Jones just isn't a big-time college quarterback. He's very athletic, but that's about where it ends. And everyone overhyped Richardson. Richardson was not that good either. So basically what you have now is University of Florida going into that final game. I swear it's almost better for Florida to lose it. And the reason why I say that is if they lose that game, and I know that you don't want to lose to your arch rival, but if they lose that game, what they gain out of that is they can focus on the hiring process and get someone in there and get someone in there quickly to jump on the fact that, hey, you've got a recruiting class that's coming in that signs in early December, and you don't have much time to get your ducks in a row, so to speak. Now, the one thing you gain out of if you beat Florida State, obviously you get the bragging rights, but big picture, you do get the kids to be able to go to a bowl game. You get the extra few weeks of practice or whatnot. But I don't know if that's as advantageous when you're about to have a complete overhaul of the coaching staff. So that's why I say Florida losing this weekend is not the worst thing that could happen to the Gators, to be perfectly honest with you. And they're going to go in, and Florida is going to, with Mullen. Now, interesting, Mullen was given the option to coach this weekend, and he declined. He said he'd be a distraction, but I think Mullen just said, "Nah, to hell with it. If you don't want me here, I don't want to be here." I don't think Mullen cared about being a distraction. I think Mullen more the fact that he knew he wasn't going to have it in him. He didn't want to go through a week of knowing he was getting the axe and have to put together a game plan, et cetera, when he can say, you know what, I'll just go enjoy Thanksgiving with my family and to heck with it. Greg Knox, assistant coach, will be the interim coach for today's game or for Saturday's game, and then we'll see what happens if they win the game and go to a bowl game. I would think Knox would continue, but we'll see what happens there because a lot of those guys have to start looking for their own jobs as well. So a lot of those guys might just dip out. Who knows? So you got that going on, but then the next big question is, who does Florida hire? Who do the Gators want to hire? And I've got my list, and I'm going to rank them in order. I think number one with the bullet, if I'm the Florida Gators, I go get Lane Kiffin. I don't know if Lane Kiffin wants to go to Florida. I don't know if he wants to leave Ole Miss. I think he likes it at Ole Miss. Look, he can be his own guy at Ole Miss and essentially have his own statue and have his own mark on a program, much like Spurrier did at Florida, Bowden at Florida State. Lane Kiffin could be that to Ole Miss. He goes to Florida, he's just another guy. And if it doesn't work out well, they're going to fire you within 2 or 3 years if you don't do as well as they think you should do, which means win the SEC East. The next guy on my list, if I'm Florida, this is the more logical one to me. This one makes a lot of sense. Is go get James Franklin. James Franklin is an incredible college football coach. He's coached in the SEC. Remember, he started at Vanderbilt. And it just doesn't seem like James Franklin is happy at Penn State. There's a lot of reasons behind it, but essentially James Franklin appears to be looking elsewhere. Now, the one thing about firing Mullen at the time that they have fired him, you've pigeonholed yourself in one way. You're trying to hire a coach when you have USC and LSU jobs open, and that's going to be an issue. Because USC and LSU jobs are viewed as greater than Florida. The facilities are better, you name it, right down the road. So, but right now I've got Kiffin 1, Franklin number 2. Number 3, I would go Bill Napier, the Louisiana coach. He's built a good program there, and he will put butts in the seats, runs a very exciting offense. A couple other names that have came out. Matt Campbell, I don't like that fit at all. I really don't. I'm not impressed with Matt Campbell. His team was supposed to be a college football playoff contender this year, and they're going to barely be over 500. So I don't like Matt Campbell. I also saw something the other day that I found was just strange, and it turned me off for him as a coach. They're down by a touchdown. They just scored a touchdown. And Matt Campbell is sitting on the bench with his legs crossed, kind of lounging, talking to the quarterback as his defense is taking the field. That tells me that Matt Campbell only cares about the quarterback. This was a huge game. They were down by a touchdown to Oklahoma, and he's over there drinking a glass of lemonade and soaking in the sun. So I don't like Campbell at all. I'm not a big fan of Todd Monken, the Georgia offensive coordinator. People keep talking about him. I don't know why. I'm just not. He's not. The only thing you get out of that is that you make your arch rival weaker by taking one of their guys. But is Georgia's offense that dynamic? I'm not impressed by it. And then the other one would be Alabama offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien did a good job at Penn State. He is a guy that I would put down towards the bottom of the list of the want-to gets. I don't know if he has the personality to take on Gator Nation. And so that is it. We're going to go ahead and get out of here with real quick birthdays. Today is the 54th birthday of Mr. Boris Becker. If you don't know who he is, you ought to. 3-time Wimbledon champion. German-born tennis player Boris Becker. Happy birthday there. And then on this date in history, the American Association expels the Philadelphia Athletics, who lost the last 22 games. They suspend them and expel them from the league because they sold off their entire roster just to make money and put basically pickup players out there on the field. The Quakers team would be, the Quakers, a team that had played the 1890 season in the Players League, replaces the ousted Philadelphia Athletics from the American Association. All these leagues, the American Association, the Players League, all of them put together, it eventually leads to there being one main league by the end of the 1890s, which is the National League, and then Ban Johnson and company would come up with their American League towards the end of that decade, and then that's why you would end up with the World Series in the, this is 1890 I'm talking about. You would end up with the World Series 13 years later. But all this is coming to an end, and they're all fighting it out, and there were several leagues. There was the Beer League, the Players League, the American Association. Players League was very popular. They just could not financially sustain. All right, we'll get out of here. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day here. We'll see you next time on the Sports Page. Take me out to the ball game.